Hello everybody. That last video I put up about asking for your help, I have been completely overwhelmed by the amount of support coming in and the things so many of you have said in those comments. I'm not sure if I can express enough how much it's made me feel like I am not alone in creating these videos. It's really something that we're all doing together. And so many of you standing beside me and so many of you expressing how much these videos mean to you. I'm just feeling so pumped up. Thank you. You've given me a great gift. I had promised a really fun little video, and I guess it's not going to be super little because what I'm doing here is this video has two functions. One is for forest monks that are actually coming out here to stay at Wean University. I'm going to be sending them this link because then they can look at this and it's going to give them things that they can do before coming out here to kind of give them a head start. So it's a pre-training before the forest monk training. For the rest of us, I thought this could be a really fun way to see, what some people that are going to go into some pretty extreme stuff, how they are being asked to prepare. And you might be able to take some of these training suggestions and then apply them to your life. I'm not going to go into a great detail with any of these, but I'm just going to try to give a few hints of some places where we can make some powerful changes in our lives. And I'll also try to remember to drop a few ideas of resources along the way. So I hope you enjoy it. Cold conditioning. When you live in the woods, you're naturally going to be thermoregulating. That means that your body is going to have to adapt to different temperatures. Right now, most of us were living in a climate controlled condition. We can go all day long sometimes without stepping out of a temperature that's within 1-2 degree range of what we feel comfortable in. We can change that and we can really expand our comfort level so that we can be comfortable with 5, 10, 20 degree variation on either side of that comfort range. Here's how we do it. I have to start getting a little uncomfortable in order to get comfortable. So today, I don't know, it's probably 45, a little bit windy, there's no sun. I can come dressed up like this, or I can take off a layer, and then suddenly my body has to do a little bit of work. And the more I work that part of my body, the more I exercise it, like anything else that we exercise, the stronger it's going to get. So one of the easiest ways to cold condition is going to be to shed one layer. You can take cold showers. We have a video on YouTube about it. My two young daughters come and talk about it if you need some extra inspiration. But this idea of shedding one layer and letting yourself be a little bit uncomfortable will really make a difference over time. Here's one little tip or trick, if you will. And that's that we can really transform our experience of cold if we learn to release into it. So, if I sit out here and I clench, I'm going to clench kind of emotionally and mentally, but I'm also going to clench my muscles. And when I clench like this, I exacerbate my sensation of cold. If I roll my shoulders back and open myself to the sensation, there will be a 2, 3, 5 second kind of shiver. But then suddenly, I'll realize that when I'm open to it, that sensation of cold is not nearly as cold as it felt before. I'm not asking anybody to go out and get hypothermic or frostbitten, but if you're going to walk a block or walk out to your car or go out to the mailbox, ask yourself, do you have to wear all the clothes you're going to wear, or can you just walk out there Open yourself, experience that cold for the moment that you're in it. The more we do this, the more we adapt. It's that simple. Another thing we encourage is that people who are going to come here try going barefoot or wear minimalist shoes. There's a number of reasons for this. First of all, in the woods, it's just plain quieter. If we have really bulky shoes with hard bottoms, we tend to crunch things. We can't feel the ground anymore. And so we're a lot louder. It's tougher to get closer to animals or wildlife, and definitely tougher if we're playing scenario games or sneaking up on each other if you have those big clunkers on. The other thing is that I think over time we're going to come to find that if we seal off, you imagine I always had my hand sealed up in a cast or in a mitten, that it would kind of have an effect on my whole system in the sense that this is a very important receptor, and this takes in a lot of information about the world. And if those are closed off, then I'm missing something on a daily basis. Our feet are the same way. They're incredibly sensitive, and they have a great ability to, when we walk through the woods, for instance, we can tell, about rainfall. We can feel tracks with our feet. There's amazing things that we can do just by having our feet free. If you would see Richard, for instance, who's out here right now, be amazed. I mean, he can go anywhere barefoot and just run on incredibly terrain that I wouldn't run on barefoot. He's really taken the time to develop his feet. And so our feet are perfectly capable of taking on that kind of, extreme use. For most of us, though, we can get our feet a little bit healthier just by cutting back on how much we wear shoes. All we have to do is take off our shoes. I just have sandals on here, but if I take them off, then my feet, they get to really spread out, so the toes can spread out wide. And there's all kinds of tendons and muscles throughout the foot that want to be strong and engaged. But when they're squashed into a shoe, then they're they actually become kind of malformed. What happens is that the toes are kind of crushed in by the shoe that smushes them in, and over time even our bones will change. The muscles, the tendons become really weak. Somebody's pretty interested in this. Become really weak, and my foot really loses its ability to open up and spread out again. So doing a little bit of barefootness, you can start in socks, and it can be walking around on carpet. Just don't wear shoes inside. If you have a lawn or grass, you can walk around there on the grass and just let your feet feel and move. It does wondrous things. This is my daughter Mirabelle, who some of you know. She has secret plans to take over my YouTube channel eventually.
That's why I like making more videos.
Another thing that I ask forest monks to do is to consider weaning themselves off of pillows. Today we're going to show you the reason why, structurally, why we ask people to think about it just for the good of their posture. If you notice, a lot of people as they get older, you start to get a forward neck job.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah. And we're going to see where that comes from, at least partially. So we're trying to return people to a more upright posture.
Like this.
And, yeah, exactly. And there's just the fact that when they come out here, when you're going on survival adventures and living out in the woods, hauling a pillow around is very inconvenient. So being able to go without a pillow, or just to use something a lot less fluffy than the usual pillow, can really make a difference in the woods. Here, when Mirabelle's lying down, we can see that her cervical spine feeds right into her spine. Everything's really nice and aligned when she's laying in bed that way without a pillow.
It feels nice, actually.
And this is a little bit of an over-exaggerated pillow, but we're doing it so that you can see what's going on here. Look what this does to her neck. So there it comes, and then it's sitting at this jutted forward.
It feels like somebody is prying my neck.
Prying your neck. It's not very comfortable. She sleeps without a pillow all the time.
I do not like it.
And so she's adapted to not having a pillow, where for a lot of us, if we've slept on a pillow for a long time, our muscles, our bones, they've adapted to this, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable at first to adapt back to not using a pillow. So give yourself some time. What you can do is you can wean yourself down. So if you're using a really fluffy pillow, then you can move to something a little less fluffy like this. There, this is still
Still a little angle.
creating a little bit of an angle, but much less. And if you want to try this long term, an easy way to do it is just to not
Use
buy
the
to not buy a new pillow, to let your pillow unfluff over time, and over a year or two it's just going to get thinner and thinner and thinner. If you're not very broad-shouldered, then you can even lie on your side and your neck is going to come out pretty straight. You might want to use maybe a very thin pillow to give yourself sort of a straightness. If you're broader shouldered, then your neck might be cranking down a lot when you sleep, and it might be more appropriate to use a pillow on your side a little bit. So I sleep on all angles. If I'm on my front or my back, I don't use a pillow, but then I have this real thin one that's worn down over the years that I'll use if I'm on my side.
I think that's a nice idea, but I like it better with just, if I had to sleep with a pillow, I would use my shirt. But then I love just sleeping like off a pillow.
No pillow at all. Yeah. Remembering that we're spending 8-10 hours a night, perhaps,
Yeah.
sleeping. So
On this big fluffy thing and
what are we doing to our
neck.
to our spine?
Cranking it.
Yeah.
Basically.
And so what, remembering that maxim that we're always adapting, no matter what we're doing. So if we're spending 8 or 10 hours a night adapting ourselves to having our neck jutted forward, then that becomes a contributing factor to having that jutted forward posture
Yeah.
as we get older. So again, doing this for the good of your posture, but also when you go out into the woods, it makes things a lot easier because you either are fine without a pillow or you're able to just take your shirt, roll it up a little bit and make a very minimalist pillow and you'll be just fine. Back behind me, these girls are great at situational awareness in general. When I say situational awareness, I'm talking a little bit differently than when I use awareness of our inner state. So I'm really talking about being aware of our environment. And you watch the deer here and they're always looking, listening, they're aware. They don't often get locked in. And this is a great skill to have out in the woods. Here's a perfect example. If I am walking down a path and I get locked into watching the person in front of me, or as usually happens, watching the path for roots and rocks that I'm going to step on, then I might miss the lobster mushroom that's right off the path to the right, or I might miss those deer. And so by learning, in our culture, it's called foveal vision. This is our little central circle of vision where it's clearest. It's why when we read, our eye has to scan because we have that little part of our vision that's most clear. And when I'm locked into that, I miss so much. By learning to tune into my peripheral and just to pay attention to when my mind gets locked down and say, wait, I'm going to look around a little bit. This comes in so useful in the woods, and our culture detrains it. So this is another thing that I ask forest monks to think about a little bit before they come out here. They can have a head start on this. Then when you get into the woods, you're going to notice a big difference in how much you see and how much you perceive. Meditation. If you can implement even a small amount of meditation into your life, it can make a huge difference. If you are more mystically minded, then there's a lot of places you can go with this. As far as if there's, if you have God in your life, then you can make your prayer just a feeling of love towards God, whatever it's going to be. In this case, I'm going to talk about a non-mystical approach to meditation, really thinking of it as push-ups for the mind. It's been proven again and again that even a small amount of meditation each day actually physically changes the structure of our brain. And what I mean is that areas of our brain shrink in size, in mass, especially the parts that have to do with our fight or flight kind of response, and the parts of our brain that have to do with compassion, with being able to look more rationally and calmly at a situation, those grow. To meditate, the best way to do it is to try to establish a habit. So you have to have something that is going to be your marker. And for most people, it's just having a certain time in the day. You're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to brush your teeth, and then at 7:30, you're going to sit down 5 minutes. 5 minutes, that's all. Sit down for 5 minutes, close your eyes. You can be in any kind of posture you want. It doesn't have to be anything special. Close your eyes and try to just pay attention to your breathing. Pick one sensation of breathing. So it might be the air coming in and out of my nose, or it might be the feeling of my chest moving against my clothing, or the muscles of your ribs expanding and contracting, or your belly if you want to belly breathe. The point though is to try to just pay attention to your breath. When your mind wanders off, that's a good thing. It's not bad. It's a good thing. It means that now you have a chance to bring your mind back to your breathing. And when you do that, you just did a push-up for your brain. You just taught it to be off when it's in monkey mind, to come back to stillness. And that's the real benefit, not sitting in stillness. Very few of us can do that, and that does not need to be our goal. But if we can be off in monkey mind and come back to stillness, that's it. Meditation. Another big thing that changes for people when they come out to take part in the Forest Monk program is their diet. To prepare for that, really the biggest thing you can do, and this does good for all of us, is to try to get off of sugar. If there's one thing you can do with your diet, it would be to get off sugar and probably trans fatty acids. But sugar is the one that's so common, so prevalent in our food, and most of us are pretty addicted to it. When I tell people this, I have to say we have to learn how to read labels, because it's not just going to say sugar. There are a lot of words for sugar, and it might be brown rice syrup and maltodextrin and cane syrup and all different names for it. And if you look online a little bit, names for sugar in nutrition labeling, then you'll be able to see a list of those names and become more savvy about where there's hidden sugars in the products that you're eating. if people cut back on the sugar, there might be a week, 2 weeks when you feel kind of crappy as you get off of sugar. Really, you're getting over an addiction. But once you get over that period, you're going to feel a lot better. If you want, you can take this even further and try to get fat adapted. I'm not going to explain exactly what fat adaptation is. The Daily Apple, Mark's Daily Apple, if you would type in Mark's Daily Apple fat adaptation, you'd see a good article on it. But it's not about going into ketosis. And I hope I'm not throwing out terms that a lot of people aren't familiar with, but it's about getting a balance between being able to burn sugar and burn fat, essentially. And so when we become fat adapted, it's a huge advantage out here because we no longer are feeling so dependent on food. If we're going to miss a meal, and that happens a lot out here because we're out on some adventure or something, you don't even feel hungry. It's no problem to miss that meal. And then you can make up for it calorie-wise, in a future meal. But you're not having that hangry feeling where you just feel so hungry and you start to get irritated. I ask that everybody that comes out to take part in the Forest Monk program, that they are off of tobacco, caffeine, and alcohol. And to me, it makes sense in our regular lives too. There's some studies that say red wine is actually good for us, for our heart. But to me, these are substances that I find don't add a whole lot to my life. There's a pleasant feeling of having some alcohol in your system. But over time, I've had to question, is it really that pleasant? Because in a way, to me, it feels more pleasant to have a clear mind, to be really able to engage with people. And, if I'm using the crutch of alcohol in order to engage socially, it just doesn't feel the same to me. It doesn't feel as honest. It doesn't feel as genuine as when I can open up some doors inside of myself, be a little bit vulnerable to somebody, try to crack a joke and, nobody laughs and have to deal with that feeling of embarrassment or social faux pas. These are all really good things for us because they help us to grow and develop as a person. And so, to me, that's why I don't like to use those things myself. And then, for the students out here, we just have a drug, alcohol-free, tobacco-free campus. And so, it's important when they come out here that they're not dependent on those substances. But for you, if you're using some of those things, maybe just stop and question a little bit the role that they play in your life and try a week or a month or a year without them and see what you think. You might find that there's things waiting on the other side of there that maybe weren't expected. Getting in shape. As soon as you get out into the woods, you're having to move. You might have to move camp for some reason, and you're carrying things back and forth. You might be carrying big logs, breaking firewood, chopping wood. There's 1,000 things that you do that involve just using your body. And sometimes our bodies are, in our culture, can get used to being underused. So, starting to move your body. And what I advocate, people, when they come out here, they're going to be learning very specific movement styles. We do kind of a primal fitness thing where we're trying to move our body in its full range of motion. But unless you have some guidance in that, here's some things that you can do that can kind of start you off. I encourage people to get some cardio, and I'm not talking about running long distances for hours and hours and hours, but doing things that gets your heart up and going. It might be kickboxing, it might be dancing, it might be some trail running. And if you are already in fairly good shape, you can move to HIIT, H-I-I-T workouts, where you are getting a lot of cardio benefit, but you're doing it without doing that kind of long distance cardio thing. I used to be a distance runner, and I've moved away from it just because I felt like it was starting to affect my joints and things, and so now I try to do shorter distance type things, but that's just me. Body weight exercise, as far as building strength. I've had people come out who are just built from weights, and they can bench way more than I ever could, but when they're trying to climb a tree or do something that's really functional, often that strength doesn't translate over quite as much as you would think. And so body weight exercise, calisthenics, and there's a lot of good resources on YouTube if you want to start exploring calisthenics. But using our body weight, there is really an unlimited amount of progression where we can make things more and more difficult on ourselves. And it's going to build a really functional strength that then when you go out and you try to swing branch to branch or climb a tree or vault over a rock, you're going to be able to do those things. So even if you're not going the forest monk route, these are some things that can really help you to become a little bit more fit. The last thing is a little strange. People give me a quizzical look when I suggest this, but it is learn to use chopsticks. And the reason is that often people out here, they're going to start with maybe a metal fork and a spoon, but we're going to try to transition away from using those things. In other words, we're going to say at some point, maybe let's give up that fork and you're going to make something that you're going to use instead. Chopsticks are easy to make, and they're very functional for eating, and once you know how to use chopsticks, they're great around the campfire. Often you want to move a coal from one place to another, or you're going to coal burn a bowl and you want to pick up a coal and be able to sit it and place it. Being able to know how to use those chopsticks allows you to really move coals around and grab them and pick up that piece of nice meat that you dropped into the fire, and lots of advantages. So learning to use chopsticks. Okay, that's it. What I was hoping here is that this could be a guide for forest monks that are coming in, some things to do for pre-training before you engage in the actual forest monk training. But for the rest of us, just some tips and some ideas of if we're looking for places that we can make some little changes in our life, here's some ways you can start out. A quick piece of advice, and that's that remembering that when they do studies on willpower, they're finding that if we try to take on 10 things at a time, we usually are going to fail. But if you say, this month, I'm going to say, cut back on my pillow use, and that's going to be my one kind of self-improvement goal, then as I do that, I'm able to dedicate my willpower to that, and I'm probably going to be successful. And then the next month, after that's settled in and I feel comfortable with it, then I might say, okay, I built up some willpower practice, now I'm going to take on a big one. I'm going to try to cut out sugar. And then, boom, you try to take that on, but only take that on. Of course, everybody has different amounts of willpower. You might be different, but for most of us, remembering to take on one of these challenges at a time will probably make a real difference. Please do, in the comments, share anything about any of these subjects. If you've tried going without a pillow, if you've tried going barefoot, what it's been like for you to try to go sugarless if you've tried that, or to change your diet, struggles with trying to stop drinking or stop, smoking, tricks, tips. So anything about changing our life in a training context and how you have implemented it in your life, the differences that it's made, and encouragement for others so that they can see, what you've done and hopefully be inspired to make some positive changes. Thanks for watching.